Well, hello again everyone. I thought I might make this video because there's not much going on just at the moment. I'm going to be rushed off my feet later on, and also it's a horrible wet forbidding day today, so I don't suppose I'm going to go and ride anything out there. I don't need to, so I thought that perhaps I would just touch on the subject. I get occasional emails and messages through comments and whatever asking me, I get people asking what I would look for in a bike that was for sale that I was going to see, and any tips on this and that and the other. And it's a tricky one. It is a minefield, really. Myself, I've been caught out with things that have appeared better than they were, so you just got to be careful, and there's no hard and fast sort of means of sort of knowing whether you're going to be getting anything as good as it looks, or better than it looks, or nowhere near as good, whatever. But a few little things that I suppose that I could perhaps touch on. Obviously, you want a machine that's pretty complete and presentable looking, and to my own mind, fairly sort of correct and original. I mean, I'm not a rivet counter or anything like that, but something that's unmolested. I really don't like things that have been cut and shut and welded. There's some very, very skilled welders and whatever out there, don't get me wrong, but personally I generally steer clear from things like that, except under extreme circumstances, or if I know the origins or whatever. But there's some absolutely awful customized things out there, so if you're into your bobbers or whatever, pay particular attention not only to the welding, but there's things like swing arm lengths and angles, you know, because of the length of the suspension units, should they be applicable or what. There's all sorts of things, but generally a nice, fairly sort of as intended machine is good to go for. And you can obviously refer to pictures and books and whatever and check and see what looks right and what doesn't. An example, actually, and some of these things can be dangerous, and actually before I started making videos, before my sort of YouTube days and whatever, one example pops into mind. There's been many. A BSA A10 SS Spitfire Scrambler that I had here, lovely looking thing with the high loud pipes and everything, and it went really well. I forget what I had to do to it. It wasn't much work, but one thing I noticed on it was it's an immaculate looking bike. Somebody had converted the front so that it had a Norton twin leading shoe front hub on it in the BSA forks, and although the wheel was fitted to the forks quite nicely, the torque arm for the brake came up behind the fork leg, from the brake plate behind the fork leg, so it was actually in compression. So straight away there's the element of risk that if you braked really hard, that could perhaps collapse or fold or something and allow the brake plate to slew round with the wheel, and then all hell could break loose and you'd probably be over the handlebars. So I put that right, I modified that and made a torque arm going out in front of the forks so that it was in tension when the brakes were put on. So little things like that, not everybody would notice or perhaps even consider things like that, but when you've got something and there's deviations from standard or how it was intended to be, look very, very closely and think, because sometimes not everybody really realises what they're doing, and that's a perfect example of it. If I was looking for a bike and I was going to go and perhaps see one that was offered for sale, I'm not so sure that I would want to go and see a fully restored, immaculate machine. I'd sort of prefer really to see one that looked well used, a little rough around the edges, And wouldn't it be great to be able to go and see a bike for sale and see it out on the owner's drive with the engine still warm, road dirt on it, no oil dripping from underneath, and he comes out and starts it and it sounds great and there's no smoke or whatever, and you know that that guy's just been for a ride on it. Another thing to sort of possibly verify that a bike is a good machine would be, now you probably need to sort of know your date codes for the tyres and whatever. Might be worth swatting up on them if you don't know, but look for recent tyres with a reasonable amount of wear on them, because that would show you that that bike's been used and ridden and it's been able to put that wear on those tyres, rather than, it'd be great, wouldn't it, if you saw a spotless bike with brand new tyres on it with the moulding tags still all over them, and oh yeah, great, brand new tyres. But that bike might only do 5 miles up the road and it might go pop for all we know. But if you got one there that's clearly been run earlier in the day, perhaps still a bit warm, bit of dirt on it, that's how I'd like to see a bike presented. Although there's obviously lots of people that want to polish things to within an inch of their lives, and there's probably some very highly polished bikes around that are very good as well, you know, let's be fair. But I've had a few here that have looked absolutely amazing, and I mean better than when they left the factory, and I've had such a number of those that have been a problem. So all that glitters is not gold, as they say, so just be careful, don't be bowled over by the looks and the shininess and whatever, look deeper. I can say this about twin cylinder bikes, certainly, more so than singles or triples or even fours perhaps, but I've seen it on some twin cylinder bikes, and as well as British ones I've also seen it on Japanese ones, and a Honda 400 Dream actually springs to mind as the prime example. If it's a twin cylinder bike, and it doesn't matter whether it's a 360 crank or a 180 or whatever, the fact is the cylinders are side by side. If the bike's got a centre stand, put it on the centre stand and start it up and then rev it a bit. Chances are, especially with an old British bike, as you rev it, it'll probably move backwards, you know, sort of jump backwards or slide backwards on its stand, and that's quite a normal sort of thing. That's a normal phenomenon for bikes like that to do that. But if you see it actually waggle from side to side and walk backwards on the centre stand, like that Honda 400 Dream I saw years ago, and a few others I've seen since, that is a good indication that you've probably got worn main bearings in that engine, and it's the actual sort of gyroscopics from the crank moving in the main bearings. Obviously it shouldn't do that, but you don't need a hell of a lot of play in those main bearings for that to take place. So if you've got a twin cylinder bike and you put it on the centre stand and rev it, and it noticeably sort of waggles and walks, I would walk too, leave it there. Probably a lot of problems in that engine. Mechanical noises, again, ideally the quieter an engine the better. There are some engines around that can rattle a bit and just sound that way for years and years, and one example I've got is, we've seen it in videos I've made previously, is my little Triumph Sports Cub replica. Now that's quite a clattery sort of engine compared to the one in this little Tiger Cub here, but it's racked up the miles to prove itself, and the noises never get any worse. So some sort of chatter and mild clatter is okay. What you don't want to hear is hard, heavy sort of knocking. And if you're lucky enough to be allowed a test ride, now these days obviously people are reluctant to allow that, but if you could come to some arrangement where the seller is holding the full asking price in cash or whatever, and then you can go and have a ride, that would be the best thing to do. Otherwise you're just going to stand there, kick the tyres and trust what the guy tells you, or hope you can trust what he tells you, or she, and you're going to be really sort of taking a gamble and a guess. There's so many pitfalls, potential pitfalls, but you can come away with a good bike. Look for all the obvious things like chain and sprockets in good condition. Like I said, tyres, that's a bonus. If the paintwork and the chrome work and whatever is presentable and clean, that's obviously very good too. But as I've already said, the ones I'm most suspicious of are the real bright, shiny, potential trailer queens. And another thing, if you can do, run the machine until it gets warm enough that any potential mechanical problems or smoke or leaks or whatever might become apparent, because some engines will smoke from cold and clear up when they warm up. Some engines won't smoke until they warm up, and then when they do, that's when it starts billowing out, and they're obviously the worst. The ones that smoke a little on the initial start-up cold probably only perhaps wet sumped a little or something, and once they get going, the scavenge oil pump will clear the crankcase in a dry sump engine anyway, and if things improve when they warm up, that's great. It's also, you know, whether, I don't think many people now are aware of, perhaps, let's just say we're going to go and have a look at a BSA A65. Now if I went to have a look at one of those, I would know, or hope I would know, pretty much what to expect from a good one. Also obviously a Triumph Tiger Cub, but even I could get caught out. And I had a Tiger Cub here not long ago that I worked on actually, and it went very well, and it pulled very well. It didn't smoke, it didn't leak, but it was quite clattery. But I decided, in fact, that machine was offered for sale, and I very nearly bought it myself, but I would have got in a lot of trouble. But the sort of noises I was hearing from that engine didn't really worry me, because I'd heard them in other ones. But if somebody had never heard a Tiger Cub running before, heard that engine running, they might have thought, oh, that's on its way out. Now, it might have been, but I really don't think it was. I think it was quite a healthy engine with just a bit of general wear here and there inside it that didn't really amount to anything too serious. My Trials Cub replica has got a very low miles engine in it after I'd rebuilt it probably nearly 40 years ago actually, but yeah, the new crank, new main bearings, new piston, rebore, new valves, guides, you name it, it went in. So that is a good example of a low miles engine, and it's nice and rattle and clatter free. It puffs a little bit of smoke now and again, only a tiny bit. It doesn't need the oil topping up in between oil changes, so again, a little puff of smoke needn't be the end of the world. But obviously, if you look in your mirrors and you can't see behind you, well then you've got a problem, haven't you? But if it rides, you throttle off for a corner, open up and there's a little puff of smoke and then it clears, I wouldn't be too worried about that even. And like I say, I would rather buy a bike that I know was being used and doing a few miles and had done some miles recently than something wheeled out in pristine condition that looks like it's just come out of a museum, because like I say, some of those, I'm not tarring them all with the same brush, but some of those can carry problems with them. So good tyres, good chain and sprockets, all the visible stuff. I'd sit on a bike, apply the brakes, try the suspension for movement, smooth movement and whatever, and obviously you want to check for play in the wheel bearings and forks, you know, steering head, that sort of thing. All basic stuff really, but there's no real sort of, people say for instance, I'm planning to buy a Royal Enfield Constellation, what should I look for? Well, same as anything else really. No leaks if possible would be nice, no smoke would be nice, no rattles would be nice, but sometimes you're going to get a degree of those, as long as it's not plastered in oil and leaving great big pools of it everywhere, you know, it's probably alright. If if the electrical system is present, if it's got one, decent lights that charge, the electrical system charges would be nice. And I rarely look at ammeters for looking for charge. I like to switch the lights on, aim them against the wall or something, and just rev the engine a bit and see if they brighten or not. And if they do, you're charging. That's fine. I like points ignitions. Not so keen on electronic ones, but I mean, if something came my way and it was running well on one, I'd probably leave it alone until something happened to make me do otherwise. Like my A65, I converted that back to points after I ended up having to push it up a steep hill when it just stopped like it had been switched off. Now that is the downside of electronic ignition. It works fine until it doesn't. Points, you might lose a cylinder or get a misfire or something, but the chances are you may well be able to limp home or just get it going well enough to keep moving. But that's, again, personal preference of mine. What else can I say? I think I've just about covered it, really. Just to say, happy hunting. I hope some of what I've said might have made sense and be helpful, but it really is very difficult for me to sort of tell somebody who asks, what should I look for? I'm thinking of buying a bike. I don't know. I wish you all the best of luck, and I can just give you those few pointers, really, and hopefully, like I say, if you really want a bike and it's expensive and you've got the money there, perhaps you can come to some sort of arrangement with the owner where he can hold the money and you can actually have a go on a thing, because if you're spending 7,000 or 8,000 quid or more or whatever, you really should be able to satisfy yourself that you're happy with what you're buying, and the only way that I could do that would be to have a go on it. And if an owner refused me a ride on whatever machine it was, even if I offered him the full asking price in cash to hold on to while I was out, if I wasn't allowed to take that test ride under those circumstances, I think I'd start smelling a rat and probably walk away and keep my money and look for something else. So I hope that that's been of some use. Maybe not much, but it might help someone somewhere. And just to round off, I'll say happy Christmas, and we'll look forward to more mechanicking and riding and whatever, perhaps before the year is out, but certainly early in the new year. So to those who want it, happy Christmas, and to the rest of you, just enjoy your time off or whatever, and happy hunting for those used bikes.